I'm not your expected adventurer. Many would describe me as an idiot. Others would say I'm mad. Off my rocket, they laugh. They say I make too many mistakes, too clumsy, too far-fetched. They roar with disbelief, with disdain even. For they mark me as the benchmark of who not to be. Professional? I hear them cry. A professional fool, no less. However, I do not share the same vision. What others may call madness, I see as passion. What they say is an unorthodox path, I see no less than a road littered with curiosity, beckoning for discovery, each step enticing me with things more beautiful than I could ever imagine. And I think to myself, how mad one must be to think of themselves as sane, for the ability to accomplish great things is not born from the comfort of normality, but from the wild sparks of madness that ignite from within all of us. And this is exactly what I would have said to you all, had I not forgotten to trickle charge my motorcycle.
So I was due to set off 2 hours ago. My bike battery died, so we're currently sat outside on the street charging it up. Great start to the trip. Oh dear.
The thought of my motorcycle battery dying in the middle of nowhere was nerve-wracking, but I chose to see it as an adventure rather than an obstacle. After all, every great journey has its share of challenges. Now there was an upside to my mistakes, for the sky decided the moment that I actually was able to get on the road, it would grace me with an unexpected thunderstorm. Now I like to multitask as much as most, and so it was a pleasant surprise to have all of my clothes washed simultaneously along with my hair.
Ow! Whoa, I just cut my fingers on my right leg. Oh.
Unfortunately, the weather did not extend its generosity to tumble drying services, and because of the issues with my batteries, I was cautious about turning on my heated clothing. As such, I did suffer a miserable 300 miles of cold, wet hands as I made my way down south. Because I'd set off a lot later than anticipated, and because it was the first day of the trip, I thought it would be a good decision to break up the journey and find somewhere to stop overnight halfway down. If you're new to the channel and wondering what is going on, I'm currently riding to the most northern point of Europe, which is Nordkap in the Arctic Circle, in order to raise money for the Northwest Air Ambulance, a charity that receives no government funding in order to keep it running. To make things more interesting, I'll be wild camping all the way up, partly because I clearly hate myself, and partly in hopes that people will feel guilty enough for the pain and suffering I'm putting myself through and donate to the cause, for which you can find a link in the description below. Now, not every country allows wild camping like Scotland and Norway, and so for days like these I've had to find the next best thing, which in this case is a farmer's field. Now, I'd just like to point out that this is in fact a legally registered campsite. However, the only two amenities on site is clean, fresh running water and a sawdust toilet. And so if you're the kind of person who wants to give wild camping a try, but you're a little bit scared to go all out, campsites like these are a fantastic place to practice. This particular campsite was incredibly scary to get to in the dark, mainly because of all of the clouds that were forming on the roads in front of me. I personally want to give this campsite a shout out because when I did have to set off a day later, they did allow me to carry my booking over to the following day with absolutely no problems, and even went to the effort of meeting me at midnight to ensure that I had a camping spot.
Right. Okay. Oh, let me just...
Toilets in the corner there.
Excellent.
Washing up station there. And tap. There's another tap just.
Oh, brilliant.
The best place for you to go is along this end here. There's just a plot at the bottom corner.
Right. Okay. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Right. Cheers.
Have you got any name?
Yeah. I'll be going in the morning quite early, so. Alright, okay, thank you.
I After setting up my tent in the dark, I began to start what would become my daily routine for the next month. The journey down south was long, and I arrived at the farm by midnight. The moon was high in the sky, casting a soft glow over the quiet farmlands. And despite the late hour, the sense of accomplishment already was slightly overwhelming. I was finally on my way to Nordkap, ready to face whatever challenges came my way. However, unfortunately for me, I ended up setting base next to someone who loved to talk. All night. And 2 AM became 3 AM, which then became 6 AM, and before I knew it, I had to wake up early to catch the Eurotunnel. And I was a little bit grumpy. That morning, as the sun rose over the farm in Oxford, I decided to tinker with my motorcycle wiring. Now, it's usually the case that when you get a new motorcycle, it just takes a little bit of tinkering until it's eventually set up the way that you like it. And as I was riding down south last night, I noticed that there was some charging issues with the USB port on the bike, and also simultaneously charging my motorcycle gear at the same time. And I suspected that the fuses were to blame. This process was a little bit time consuming, and it ended up delaying my departure by 2 hours. After changing the fuses out of the bike, I then had to pick all the flies out of my morning coffee. The issue seemingly resolved, I set off towards Maidstone. However, I intended to buy a new motorcycle battery from Halfords just to be on the safe side. The ride was pleasant, but the thought of my battery dying again loomed over me. To my surprise, however, after switching the fuses over, by the time I arrived in Maidstone, the battery seemed to have recovered, and the earlier issues that I experienced just seemed to be gone. However, I was still incredibly nervous and anxious about the idea of just not swapping the battery out. But this unexpected turn of events also brought along a new challenge. I was now behind schedule for the Eurotunnel. And so I was faced with a snap decision. Do I buy a new battery, swap it out and risk missing my train? Or do I just trust that the battery had recovered and rush to the Eurotunnel? After a moment's hesitation, I decided to just take the risk and make a beeline for the train. I was ready to face whatever lay ahead.
Hello.
Mate, you travelling?
Yeah, the shuttle.
Completely wrong place. It's supposed to be over there.
Oh, really? The postcode said here.
I know, it's rubbish.
To my surprise and relief, when I finally made it to the terminal, I discovered I was actually 2 hours early. It appears that my sense of time had been somewhat skewed by the morning's stress. The staff at the Eurotunnel were super accommodating and allowed me to board an earlier train.
Would you like to go on an earlier train?
Sure.
Yeah? Alright, so yeah, be able to head straight round to Passport. Just give you your ticket.
Let me just get myself the room.
Alright.
I was grateful for their flexibility and understanding, and as I rode onto the train, I felt a wave of excitement wash over me. This was my very first time taking the Eurotunnel, and it was a brand new experience, adding to the many firsts that this journey was going to be offering me. As I was sat on my bike secured in the belly of the train, I looked around at the other passengers. Fellow bikers like myself, all sharing the same journey, and whilst English was not a common language amongst us, the other bikers were extremely liberal with the packets of biscuits and sandwiches. As I sat on the floor next to my bike, I was suddenly aware of how hungry I was and how grateful that some random biker from France was feeding me delicious biscuits. I started to listen to the hum of the train as it started its journey under the English Channel, and it was oddly soothing. Despite the hectic morning, I was on my way to Europe, and I couldn't wait to see what the road had in store for me next. In the meantime, let's not forget why I'm doing this, and that is to raise money for an incredible charity that receives no government funding whatsoever, and that is the Northwest Air Ambulance. Without their services, so many bikers' lives would be lost every year. And so please do give generously if you are in a position to do so, and in the meantime, I'll see you in a few more days. My name's Safi Sprocket, signing off.
This one was completely my fault.